Yeah, would you do that? That would be wonderful. Maybe I'll stand over here. I'm Jeannie Lupo. I'm the president of Enough is Enough, and we were here back in August. Thank you. We were here August of last year. I had to look up the date, and so we gave a presentation at the time. We are here to give an update of how we've progressed since that time. We're a new organization, relatively new, and we're about 18 months old. And we wanted to come back and do an update. I know for some people, if you weren't here at that time, some of this might be new for you, but we'll try to fill in the gaps as we can, and hopefully it'll resonate with you. So, thank you. Next slide. So our initial slide was, have you had enough of reckless driving? Now we're asking, have you seen enough attention given to reckless driving? Maybe just show of hands. Have you seen enough attention given to reckless driving? Yes. Have you seen an increase in the attention given to reckless driving? I'm hoping that people have. Good. Next one. Our group Enough is Enough. We're nonprofit, nonpartisan, 501c3. We incorporated officially last April, and we established following the death of a young woman, Erin Mogensen. This is her picture with her husband Alex and their dog Lambo. Erin was 8 weeks pregnant, and it was her 4th wedding anniversary when she was killed. She was T-boned by a reckless driver, a repeat felon, and killed pretty much instantly. Shortly after her incident, friends and family came together. We decided we wanted to do something about reckless driving, and especially reckless driving committed by people that are repeat offenders. We see a lot of people coming through the turnstile of the courts and coming back out. So that was what our intention was. And next slide, please. Our goal, our mission, is to eliminate reckless driving that results in injury and loss of innocent life throughout the state of Wisconsin. That remains our goal. Tonight we're going to update you on our progress. We're going to talk about strong communities, and then we're also going to discuss how we can help each other. We're trying to help the community, and we would like help back. Our pillars are judicial accountability, and that is in the criminal justice system. I'll talk about our Court Watch program. That's probably our biggest effort to date, and our most successful effort to date. We also do things with legislation, and so we are currently supporting 3 different bills in the state that involve towing of vehicles. One is about revoking somebody if they commit another crime when they're out on probation or if they're out on bail. And the 3rd bill is called the Transparency Bill. I'll talk about all of them. And then our 3rd pillar is community education and awareness. That's why we're here tonight, to inform the public, let you know what we're doing, let you know what we're learning, and hopefully get more people involved. Next slide. Court Watch for our Court Watch program, we have dedicated individuals who actually go and visit the court during the mostly sentencing hearings for reckless driving and fleeing an officer cases. We have one person who generates our case list. Barb is in the back. I call her our CCAP queen, but Barb spends a lot of time searching for cases that are coming to sentencing. And then we schedule and we go and visit in court. We sit in court so that the judge can see our presence, and we're there to represent the community and ask for, their inclusion of the public safety when they rule on a sentence. We started Court Watch in June of 2024, mid-June. And we were able to hear our first 100 sentencing cases by the end of November. And so we aggregated all of our information and we produced a report. And what we found was this: we observed 215 cases during that time. We had 109 of those cases go to sentencing. There's a lot of inefficiency in the courts. We find it as inefficiency. There's a lot of rescheduling of cases and things like that, and so a lot of times we'll go to court thinking we're gonna have a sentencing hearing and we get rescheduled to another time. So in that 5-month period, we heard 215 cases, 109 went to sentencing. All of those cases involved fleeing and eluding, reckless driving, or some of them involved other things, guns, drugs, OWI. 50% of the cases that we heard involved defendants that had previous convictions, previous felony convictions. And of the 109 cases, we saw 14 judges. They ruled, what we do is we try to measure against what the state recommendation is, the prosecutor's recommendation of a sentence. And compared to that, the judges ruled more leniently 69% of the time. And 35% of those cases resulted in probation instead of a charge. Now, in Wisconsin, the definition of a felony is supposed to be at least incarceration for a year plus a day, I would call it, because that's incarceration. And so that's what the legislators, I think, intended when they defined a felony. And so for people that fleeing an officer is considered a felony, last year there was legislation that we helped pass that increased that felony level one level, if you will, and there's a mandatory minimum sentence if you cause great bodily harm or death to a person. So to be hearing that a number of people are getting probation for committing a felony is a little disconcerting for our group. 61% of the defendants in those 35% of probation were also prior convicted felons. Okay, next slide, thank you. The other thing about our key findings, these are the judges. We named the judges and their percent of leniency against the recommendation of the state. Judge Shelton, we saw her for 22 cases, 91% of the time she was more lenient than the state. Judge Ramos, we had him for 8 cases, 88% leniency, and Judge Davila, 15 cases and 87%. They were the 3 highest, or the 3 most lenient judges. I bolded Judge Shelton only because I know that it's voting season and you may see her on your ballot, and you should know who you're voting for. The legislative advocacy, so in legislation, what we, last year I mentioned Senate Bill 514 that increased the felony levels and requires a mandatory minimum. And then you can go to the next slide. This year what we're supporting, and this included giving public testimony in Madison at the Judiciary Committee in the Assembly. We had a number of people go and actually provide testimony in support of AB 78 is the towing and impoundment bill. This is one authored by Bob Donovan, who's been a friend to our group, and he helped us kind of launched us, and he was the author of the Senate Bill 514 last year. So towing and impoundment, what that includes is if someone is stopped for any reason, it's an improvement actually to prior legislation that was passed in March of 2023, I want to say. So if you're stopped for reckless driving, even if it's your first incident, there's discretion given to the police and the municipality to tow your vehicle and impound your vehicle. If you have citations that need to be paid, or you have to pay the fee to get your car out, but they're being that serious about it because they don't want you to keep using your car to drive recklessly. The loophole with the previous law was that it was supposed to be the second offense. I think the police were having difficulty with figuring a lot of those details out, and so the revised bill just changes all of that and says if you're driving recklessly, your car can be towed. And it doesn't have to be your car. It can be anybody's car, even if it's a stolen car, which for the person whose car was stolen might be actually a benefit. There is a bill, AB 75 is a transparency bill. This is designed to actually do some of the stuff we're doing already with our reporting, going out and capturing a lot of the information about the cases and publishing it in a format that's easier for the public to read. We use CCAP and we research a lot on CCAP, but it's not easy to get information about cases or aggregate them. And so this will be actually a benefit for us as well. And then AB 85 is, the definition of that is that you would, if you committed a crime when you were on bail or on probation, you would have to go back to court, but the judge can revoke you for those reasons. It is pretty interesting to us what we see and we observe. We'll go to court for a case and the person presents at sentencing with 3 or 4 cases. 3 of them have been acquired since their initial case was charged to them. And so they make an agreement when they post bail that they're not supposed to commit any other crimes, but people somehow do. And so this will hopefully cause someone to really think that you are gonna get revoked if you commit another crime while you're waiting for your first case to be heard. Future, what we're talking with Bob Donovan about is the booting of vehicles that don't have a registration or a license plate. So a lot of times what happens is a car gets stolen, the cars get shared, but the license plates get removed because that's an indicator of who might own that car. And we want to advocate for booting of those vehicles because, again, if the car is not moving, there's probably no reckless driving involved with it. I had a question, I guess, because it was interesting when we were preparing for this meeting today. We wanted to invite some of your local leadership. Does everybody know how to find this or know who your representatives are, your alderperson and your state representatives? Hopefully you do, yeah. If you don't, you can go, oops, my thing is covered up. I do have a sheet in the back. If you go to the state legis.wisconsin.gov, and there, you would see this in the homepage, who are my legislators. All you have to do is enter your address and they would come up for you. There's also a map, you can look by map, so that's a pretty handy tool. And then the other thing is if you wanna find out who your alder people are, search for aldermanic district maps. You might wanna say Milwaukee in there. And then that comes up as a map also, and then you would find out who those people are. The reason I'm bringing that up is we encourage all of you to contact your representatives. Ask the questions. What are you doing? What are you doing about reckless driving? What are you doing about safety in my community? Because I think the more questions that get asked, the more they would be prompted to be doing something about it. And you should be entitled to those answers. Our third pillar is outreach and education, and this is intended to spark collaboration among people and within groups and communities. We're hoping that by coming together as groups, what Bob always tells me is if he gets an inquiry from 2 people about something, he might think about it. If he gets an inquiry from 200 people, they'll do something about it. And so, again, contacting your representatives, asking what's happening, and encouraging them to be working on the problem. We've seen things happen, and it will cause things to get done. Next one. Something that we notice is that victims very often, most often, get kind of diluted in the whole court process. And we see some victims in court, but very often we don't. So we might have a case where someone stole a car, they were reckless driving, they ran into a tree, or they hit another car, as an example. The person whose car was stolen, the person whose car was hit, the property where the tree was struck, in my mind, all of those people are victims, right? They were victims in that crime. We don't see them in court. And sometimes it's difficult for people to follow up on that. But I think for the judge to see the victim in court would make a very big difference. They see the defendant, they're working with the defendant, And I think it's easy to forget. In fact, we talked with a prosecutor last week who said, well, he just hit a parked car. No one was in the car, which is very, very good. But someone's car was still damaged, and they have to do something about that, right? It's not an easy remedy. And so we're trying to focus on the victims. Also, we've found that for a victim to tell their story, Marion is in the back. Marion spoke at our last meeting here, and she told of her situation, and what we're finding is having someone write down their story or tell their story can be kind of cathartic for them. And so we want to capture those, and we're going to start posting them on our website. So that's a coming soon thing for our website. And the last thing is in Peter's words. And so at our last meeting, Peter Jerving's parents were at that meeting, and they have actually joined our group, and we thank them. We're honored to have them as part of our group. And I wanted to ask them each to come up, and I think, Patty, you're going to read some of Peter's words, and just maybe tell about your experience thus far with Enough is Enough. If you wouldn't mind doing that, we'd love to have you come up. Yeah, that would be great.
Doug has something to say too.
Of course. Well, Doug should have something to say.
Enough is Enough came in August. We signed up right away, Doug and I. And the next week, we were in court 3 times. It was a fascinating experience. The TV shows these judges slamming down their gavels. That doesn't happen in real life. But this is the way I would always dress to be in court, to show respect to the court. And I wear my court watch badge so that they know who I am. And I always have Erin's button with me because I'm there in court for her, but also for Peter. Peter, was the police officer. He wanted to do good and catch bad guys, and he can't do that anymore. So I want to do something to catch bad guys. And I'm too old to be a police officer, but I can go into court and I can see what these judges are doing with the reckless drivers. I think eventually Enough is Enough wants to do more, deal with more than just reckless drivers. But for now, we have enough just to deal with reckless. Some of the criminal complaints that I've received in 1 week is like 25. And I always check the address where that reckless driving is done. And if it's in my district, District 4, I can write a community impact statement. And I make it very personal. I address the judge and thank him for letting me tell how that reckless driving affected me. A lot of times this reckless driving has been like 3 minutes away from my house, or 10 minutes. I let him know that. And I explain what they were charged with, and it says right on there on the criminal complaint, they could have so much in fines and so many years in jail. And I let the judge know that. They have, of all the cases that I've been involved with, they haven't gotten anywhere near what the defendant could be charged with. But I add a sentence that Peter had said in my impact statement. And my late son, Milwaukee police officer Peter Jerving, once said, "Dismissing charges in court deters officers from being proactive and discourages them from going above and beyond to catch criminals." And I want judges to know that that's how a police officer feels. And I'm sure a lot of police officers feel that way. They have to chase after these reckless drivers. They go 70, 80, 110 miles an hour through our residential streets, and these officers have to chase after them. They put their lives at risk, to get these reckless drivers. And I recently saw a Colorado Pueblo Police Department chief, Chris Knoller, speak about how the justice system is too lenient on criminals. And he said, "When we refuse as a state to hold low-level criminals accountable, they become emboldened. The broken windows theory of law enforcement worked in New York, it worked in Boston, it worked in LA and many other communities. Instead of holding low-level offenders responsible, the state of Colorado has adopted the open windows theory, where we hold no one accountable. Our victims suffer, our communities suffer, and our police officers suffer. The blood of our officers lay as the steps of our Capitol, and the reckless and soft on crime legislation passed out of there. And I am tired of the needless violence my officers and our community face because of these policies. If they, the community, truly cared about our officers and citizens, they would demand that criminals be accountable. Instead, they are released from jails with little or no bond when we can arrest them, serve less than half their sentences in prison or jail when they are sentenced, and return to our communities to assault, shoot, and in some cases kill our officers and citizens with impunity. One thing I put in my impact statement is my concern for my police officers in District 4. And I want the judges to know there's somebody out there that cares what happens to our police officers.
Thanks, Patty. I'm gonna interject a second because we didn't talk about the impact statements, but Patty's slant on the focus on the police and the safety of the police is it was a wonderful add to what we do. We submit an impact statement on behalf of the community for every case. And we ask the judges to consider the public safety, but Patty's addition has been really wonderful, and just the slant and the focus on the police safety is just a great add. So, Doug, you wanna say something?
I have less than what it looks like. Good afternoon. I wasn't planning on saying anything about broken windows theory, but I think it needs a little qualification, because I don't think a lot of people understand what that even means. Broken windows theory says that if you leave one window broken in the community, it's going to encourage people to break some more. If you leave garbage in the streets and dirty yards and things like that, it just encourages more people to throw trash down. You know, so the broken windows theory says we gotta stop having broken windows and garbage laying around. We gotta clean the neighborhood up, because criminals look out there and they say, this place is clean. Maybe I shouldn't be here. Maybe I'm gonna get busted if I'm hanging around. So anyway, enough about that. I'm kind of an advertisement tonight. And I want to talk about a few statistics. I'm sure a lot of you people are already aware of. Just two real quick ones. One is that reckless driving is up 42% in the 10 years between 2012 and 2022. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, that was 2022, this is 2025, but really that's not that long ago. Second thing, Milwaukee, and this is really bad, is the #1 across the United States for speeding compared to 70 other major cities. That's according to TMJ4 News in 2023. Again, this is 2023, 2 years ago. But you know, this group was just formed about 6 months after that. They've been around for less than a year, and we're starting to see some real changes happening. We can make all the new laws we want, and plans to combat reckless driving, but if we're not going to enforce them in the courts, they're meaningless. They're no better than patting the criminal on the shoulder and encouraging them to just go right out and do it again. In less than 1 year, E&E having been active for a year, for a little less than a year, we've seen significant changes in the attitudes in the court system every single week. We have had the opportunity to speak with prosecutors, defense attorneys, public defenders, bailiffs, sheriffs, police officers, and most importantly, judges. We've actually had judges come up to us after cases and say, hey, I know about you guys, and you're making a difference, and they're encouraging us. They've come up to Patty and I know they've come up to some of the others, they're encouraging us to keep doing this. I think they really want to make a change, but they're afraid of what the community is going to do about it. So we as a community have to push our opinion on them. They know we're a force to be reckoned with, in other words. I encourage you all to become involved with E&E in any way you can. Come with us to court sometime. Maybe once a week, maybe once a month, if you can. If you can't do that, read the criminal complaints. Write an impact statement for a case that interests you. Maybe something that happened in your neighborhood or to a friend of yours, or a neighbor down the block, because I'm sure we all probably know somebody. Remember that these are judges and other government officials that you vote for. They know that we have an influence over their decisions. Sign up for the E&E email list. That's one of the things that's big tonight. You know, we have an email list. We want you to sign up for it, because then you can start getting the weekly emails that keep you updated on what's happening. What's happening this week? What's happening next week? What's going on in courts? How is that affecting my neighborhood? So sign up, join up. It beats having to wade through the CCAP stuff on the Wisconsin website. You're gonna have access to things like this. Just some of the things that I've found. A link to the CCAP information for any particular case you're interested in. There's 3, 4, 5 pages sometimes of information, and it's going to tell you who the defendant is, what he's being charged with, what did he do in the past, what kind of cases were revolving around him before that. All kinds of history that you're not going to get just in the criminal complaint or in some of the other things. Second thing, read and download the criminal complaint. You'll get a link to it in that email. This is going to show you all the counts, the possible repercussions upon conviction, as well as the full police report, which I always enjoy reading through the police reports. I see what the cops actually had to go through to get some of these people. They're pushing their luck out there. And I know that for a fact, having been through it with my son. You're gonna be able to find all the community impact statements. E&E writes community impact statements. Some people write them personally. We have a case coming up on Thursday that Patty and I are going to. This is a community impact statement that she wrote for that case that we're going to on Thursday. And it's personal, because it happened in our neighborhood. And lastly, this is the simplest thing of all. This is called a court tracker. It's usually just one sheet. Sometimes it's 1.5 sheets, a back sheet that I get. And again, it's downloadable. You'll find it in the email. And all it is a basic summary. It tells you who the judge is, who the prosecuting attorney is, who the defense attorney is, who the defendant is, and some of the history of previous court cases that person has been through. So you're gonna learn a lot from that stuff. So basically what this comes down to is you're never gonna be in the dark about a reckless driving case in Milwaukee again. You're going to be an informed constituent voter for these judges and the prosecutors and the DA. And I know they listen. Thank you. More now than ever before, because they know we have an influence on Milwaukee politics and in the media. Because we do make an impact in the media. Everybody who has a TV has been noticing more and more that this is becoming an issue. And the media addresses it because they're not capable of ignoring it anymore. There's too many voices out there talking about it now. And we're one of those voices. So again, I just encourage you to sign up and learn more about how you can make a difference. Thank you.
Thanks. advertising, because this is, I mean, we didn't even plan together. We did most of it, so excellent. Our call to action is this. There's a number of things that can be done. So sitting in court is one thing, and it's not for everybody. We have dedicated people that go weekly. We're so thankful for all of them. But if that's not your thing, there's other things you can do. Writing an impact statement, writing letters to your leadership, writing letters coming up for our legislation. The concern about that towing bill and those other bills is that it'll pass through the Assembly and the Senate, but that we're concerned that the governor's not gonna sign that bill. And so what we did last year for 514, it was a similar scenario. Bob Donovan held a press conference. We all wrote letters. We delivered letters in person to the governor's office to encourage him to sign the bill, and I think we're gonna need to do that again. And so, if you wanna help with that effort, that's an easy thing to do. We would send out kind of a form letter. You could use our letter. You can write your own letter, but voices to the governor in order to get some of that legislation passed, that's a way that you can help, and that's a pretty easy way. Some of the other things you can do, we come and talk at this type of situation, at these types of meetings, but we welcome and we would want to come to any other groups that you belong to. Your church group, you might have a quilting group or a men's group. If we can garner groups to help us, it's so much better because they can work as a group. It can be a project for that group. And so it's a lot more people involved, and we can spread what we're doing much easier. And the last and most important thing you can do is vote. Know who you're voting for. Leadership in the county and in the city has a lot of influence. And leadership can do something about this problem, and I think they can address this problem quicker than what has been happening. I do think that can happen, so voting is really important. Our email address is up here, our website is there. If you scan that QR code, and we do have some handouts and things in the back, that QR code is a survey that lets you sign up for more information. You just enter your name, your email address. It's gonna ask if you want information about Court Watch or about legislation. And if you just wanna be on our general email list, you can do it that way. And I thank you. And first of all, I wanted to make sure that, would you raise hands if you're part of Enough is Enough already tonight? So we have a lot of people here tonight who are part of our group already. And we'd love to see more hands from this group next time we come, so. Are there any questions that we can answer?
I got one.
Yes.
So when you showed the most lenient judges, what's the percentage of the toughest judges, and do you have influence to try to get certain cases into those courts?
Well, we can't decide which courts those go to. In fact, some of the defendants we find actually can kind of work the system to get into a more lenient court. But we do think that just by showing those numbers, that we think it's making a difference. Now, we published that report on January 20th. We're gonna publish another one in the next couple of months. And so we're hoping to see that has shifted. What we've seen anecdotally is that when you're in a court for one of the judges that were more lenient, they're starting to rule closer to what the prosecutor says, even if they're doing a kicking and screaming. But we are seeing a difference in that. So, great question. Yes, thank you. And we do have the full report. If you go to our website, that report is out there. On our website, go to eneforaaron.org. Right on the homepage, on the top right, it says 2025 Court Watch reports. And so you can see those reports. You can see the information and the list of judges and how they ruled. Anybody else? Questions? Yes, sir.
For the legislation that's being worked on right now, what's the timeline on that? How far along is it?
Good question. So I know that the towing bill passed out of the assembly already. I think it's been heard, and so there's committees first on each side. The committee hears it. I don't think it's been passed out of the Senate committee yet. And so I would say, and I'm not sure, you know, last year when that Bill 514 passed, it was several weeks before it got to the governor's desk. But I would say we just keep watching. I would think that it's gonna get through both chambers in the next several weeks, I would say. Especially because it's been heard in those committees already, and then we have to wait and see when the governor's gonna sign. So, but at that time is when we would be notifying everybody. Now's the time to write a letter, so. Anybody else? Yes?
And
Right.
show up
And show up.
when it's going to sign.
Yes, when he, oh yes, exactly. We did get to go to the signing, once he decided he was gonna sign it, so that was a really big deal for us, and it was an honor to be included there, so.
And those of you who don't know, the bill raised the level for fleeing, which is a
514 did,
pretty
yeah.
big deal. It was a very
Yeah.
low level felony, and it at least gave us a little bit more to work with as far as the penalties for fleeing.
Yeah.
That was a huge win, you know, as a prosecutor, because we see so much of it.
We're just starting to see some of the mandatory minimum cases coming through. I'm not even sure if one has taken to conclusion yet, but we're just starting to see that. So in a year, since it's passing, you know, that's how long it takes for these cases to come through, so. Any other questions? We'll be around, we have things at that back table there, if you wanna sign up or take more information about Court Watch, yes, sir.
How many times does somebody have to steal a car before the system is actually gonna do something about it?
It's a really great question. In fact, in our impact statements in the last week have been asking that. How many times?
Generally, the answer is about 3,
Really?
maybe 4.
Yeah.
I think after the first time, it should be enough,
You would think so. You would think so.
because you're not only,
How many times do you have to steal a car before you actually have any consequence?
the thing of it is if you don't punish them the first time, then they're gonna do it a second time and keep on doing it, and it's just ridiculous.
Right. And that's what we believe. It seems like there's different philosophies for the judges, who wanna give chance after chance, but we believe a tough first consequence is gonna do the trick, at least in many of the cases, so that's what we're advocating for.
And I will tell you that they do take it case by case, because I do know, like, Patty and Doug witnessed the sentencing where leniency was appropriate.
Yes.
And that's how they wrote their impact statement.
Yes.
Yep.
They saw the kid in court a couple of times and realized that he really did get it, and it was more of a mistake. So it's not always
Yes.
lock them up, throw away the key.
Right.
It is the ability to take it case by case. You know, the problem that we have is, like, overwhelmingly, this is dangerous behavior and it's not being taken seriously.
Right.
But there are cases, like I said, they found a case and they really did feel it was appropriate to write, a
We
request
asked,
for, you know,
we asked for
leniency.
probation for him, don't give this guy jail time, he's making a real serious change in his life. He's getting good grades in school, he's got himself a job, he's getting his license the right way, he's paying attention to his parents, he's going to church. You know, not that you have to go to church, but, you know,
He dressed up in a suit
he
to appear
is-
before the
yeah,
judge.
and he was respectable, very respectful young man, so we
Was he
asked,
18? I
we
forget.
asked for
He was
them to
very
give
young.
him probation, and that's what the judge gave him, probation.
Certainly, there's a case to do that for the first offenders,
Right.
fleeing and whatever, look at it carefully, but we see so many that are repeat.
Yeah.
offenders.
Right.
As Jeannie was saying,
Right.
I mean, the second and third time you do this,
Right.
judges.
Great.
Right,
Yes.
and most of the time, they're throwing out any fleeing and eluding.
Yeah.
If they run from a cop, that's one of the counts, immediately tossed.
We
Yeah.
often,
It
but
doesn't even
in,
exist.
and just in defense, generally what we do is in favor of a charge that has more,
Yeah.
consequence to it.
Right,
So, and unfortunately, it does kind of take the label off it, but we almost always charge a reckless endangering safety, which holds a way higher penalty, which gives us a little bit more when we're asking for.
And that's not the judges who do that, that's
Right.
the attorneys bargaining.
Yeah, as far as dismissing cases, and we've had discussions about this, they're critical of some of our practices as well, this
Yeah.
isn't across the
Yeah,
board.
we've asked that stops happening, because if we want emphasis on
Right.
those charges, that they should stay there. But the other thing that can happen in court is the judge can still if it's dismissed but read in for sentencing, it means that the judge can still consider that he was charged with that
Right.
and give a heftier sentence on one of the other remaining charges. So
Right.
the judges have a lot of latitude, and I think, some of them are using it to be more lenient, some of them, they're using it appropriately. So, yes, ma'am.
I have a question. What about the tent on the windows? I thought like years ago, it used to be illegal to have
It is
limousine
legal.
tent.
It is illegal and it is a valid stop if the
Right,
officer
that's
thinks
what
that
I'm
your tent is
thinking.
too dark.
Yeah.
So, and that is another thing that comes, I can't tell you, I've heard that a few times, they're trying to do a stop for the tent, but, it's a drug dealer or someone without a license or someone with a gun in the car, and that's what sparks the fleeing.
Right.
But yeah, it is illegal and it is completely legal for an officer to try to pull you over if they think your tent is too dark. Cause it's a danger, it's a hazard.
Right. Yeah.
One more question, and then I'm gonna turn it back over, because I don't wanna take all the rest of your
I
time.
was just gonna piggyback on what they were saying,
Yeah.
and about the leniency, and if you're caught for whatever, you go to court, okay, that was naughty, now you will not do that again, if you do, we're gonna take your license. And they're like, okay, so they do it again, they get caught, they go in there, okay, we're revoking your license. Okay, get caught again, well, your license was
Still
revoked,
driving.
yeah, but you're still driving, okay, do it again, and it just keeps on. And then what happens? The license has been revoked how many times? They can't get one, they don't, and they're still driving without it. And therefore you got the eluding and all these other things. And you're not gonna catch me. Oh, you caught me. Uh-oh, I got caught again without my license. And so that situation, I think that encourages
It does.
some of this recklessness.
Yeah.
And like you said, for the police officers, and I was thinking, there was that one police officer, several years ago, I think, what's his name, Chucky?
Mm-hmm.
Several years ago, and they were doing a chase, and the police car crashed, and the one officer from District 4 was killed.
Charles
The younger
Irvine.
one.
Oh,
Yeah.
Charles
yes.
Irvine.
Yeah, no, not, yeah, okay, yes, and they called him Chuck, yes, and he was good, and that was the reckless scenario.
Right.
And so it's just like, and did they have a license? Probably not. Spade gun
Many
in
times
hand.
they were
Okay.
never issued a license in the first place.
Right, never had one, and so so those kind of scenarios, what can be done?
Mhm.
I don't know, cause you see so much of it,
Right.
and it's happening, as far as the drunk driving, all those, situations.
You should run for judge.
Oh.
Well, thank you again.
Thank you.